Hello and welcome to my home here in Sussex, England. This week we are in my guest house and we're going to be doing some small house decorating. Now this is a 500 square foot unit. We call it the Cottage. It's been lots of things over the years, going back hundreds of years. There's always been a building on this plot. So it's been an animal shelter, a workshop, garage, studio, annex. When we moved in, we used it as a site office when we did the big renovations, and then a couple of years ago I completely gutted it, reorganized it and turned it into this one bedroom cottage with a bathroom and a kitchen stroke living area. It also has a veranda and an outdoor kitchen, but for today we're going to be decorating inside because it is winter and we're going to do some winter decorating. Now, most of what you see today is going to be thrifted home decor, so bought from thrift stores, charity shops, auctions. These mirrors are a case in point. So I can pick these up so cheaply. I'm talking just a couple of pounds because they're small mirrors. But then I'd like to do a little bit of a makeover on them. This one in particular, this has had a white oil stain on, and I've used chalk paint on the others. Now, vintage books is something I love to style with. Sometimes I'll group them in colours, sometimes I'll turn them the other way around so you just see the leaves. Quite often, if they're damaged, I'll remove the covers and then just bundle them up with string or lace, ribbon, that type of thing. Now, you may be wondering what I'm doing with these corbels here. Well, 3 of them are attached and they are going into the uprights in order to strengthen the shelves. They haven't gone underneath because I didn't want to spoil the positioning of the brackets, and then just to balance them out I've just put that random one there. Now I am going to add my earthenware. I love to pick up earthenware. If you saw last week's video when we went thrift shopping down in Cornwall, you'll know that I picked up a few bits and bobs there, so you'll be seeing a lot of that come out today. The shelves themselves are made of oak and they were already in the house when we bought it, and they were one of the few things that I was actually able to salvage before we gutted the property. I was able to put open shelving here as I've built in lots of additional storage into this small space, into this unit, and directly opposite our floor to ceiling big bank of storage right the way along. I think it's time we need to add a little bit of greenery, so let's go outside and see what we can find. At this time of year, evergreens are your friend. We are so lucky to have this wonderful land here, which was actually the reason why I bought the property. The house was as ugly as sin and needed a huge amount of work and really tiny, but the land I fell in love with as soon as I saw it, and I knew that I could decorate from it all year round. As I always say, buy the location, not the house. You can always change the house, but you can't change the location. I've selected my clippings and I've taken just as much as I need, no more. And now I'm just going to fill a vase. And when you just add a little bit of greenery at this time of year, you don't need to spend money on lots of flowers. It just brings a room alive. Time to style the countertops now. Now this little wedge here is actually a segment that was removed from a long straight shelf that I wanted to turn a corner. So my very clever carpenter, Ben, actually adapted these two shelves that I had, decorative shelves, and then we've used them in the bedroom as little bedside shelves because there wasn't enough room to put in bedside tables. And then the offcuts, they were so pretty, I couldn't waste them. So I used them in the corners here, and the one on the very top shelf is there hiding a socket. I get lots of questions about the taps that I've used in the cottage. When I was actually doing the renovation, I spent so long looking for second-hand taps because I wanted to do as much of the build as possible using recycled, reclaimed materials. And actually, I just could not find anything that I liked at the price point that I wanted to pay. So in the end, we just made them. And I had a fun day with the plumber, and we just shaped all the taps and put all the bits on, and we made our own. I managed to get hold of 50 French cheese boards that were about 100 years old from a reclamation yard, and I used them for the flooring and for the countertops and upstands, and we cut them so well that there were just a few odd bits left, so I'm using those as chopping boards and risers. The rolling pins you can see going in here. Again, if you saw last week's video when we did the trip to Cornwall, I've developed a new passion for rolling pins, and then I lightened them using white oil stain. The technique is on that video. The tray was also found on that trip, and I've done a makeover on that. And the scales were found at auction for just £38. I absolutely fell in love with them, and I've done nothing to them apart from give them a good wash. I deliberated over changing the base, making it a bit lighter, but in the end I've left it as is because I think it's absolutely fine. Another little offcut coming in now, and then I'm just going to add a lamp. This was originally a grey, very industrial looking one, and I've just used spray paint on it and then wrapped the flecks in coir. I like to add LED vintage bulbs to my lamps because it just gives it that little quirkiness. Now, you may have seen this come in here when I did the kitchen winter decorating. This is an offcut of stair carpet. The stair carpet was probably the one thing on the whole renovation that I didn't get a discount on, but it was worth every penny. So save your money where you can, and then hopefully you'll have the funds for those special luxuries. I had a local company do the binding, the whipping, so I could turn it into a rug because, well, it was so expensive, I wasn't going to waste it. Just because we're working in a small space doesn't mean to say we can't have big statement pieces. To actually put this into context, this whole building here is actually smaller than my kitchen in the main house. So for me, it was the trickiest thing to design because I'm used to designing really quite big rooms. Small rooms I find much more difficult. But I took the concept of what I normally do and just overlaid it. Now, obviously, I have not got 10-foot ceilings in here. I have not got 600 square foot room. It is a much smaller space. But by using this big open shelving here, which I picked up from auction as an absolute find. It was just tucked in the back. It was all folded up. I had no idea what it was. I had to ask the porters and I got it for about £30. It's been amazing. So I'm using this big piece here and then adding not a lot of items, but some key big pieces, which I always find makes the space feel bigger. These 3 bowls were found at Home Sense some years ago, and they're the only things on this shelving that I haven't actually done a makeover on. The basket I picked up at Ardingly Antiques Fair for just £5. It was actually quite orange, so I've lightened it by just lightly brushing over some white wax. I'm adding some of the cushions that I was using on the house veranda in my summer and fall decorating. They were originally a knitted grey. I dyed them green for the summer and it didn't take on the outside, so I turned them inside out and then I dyed them brown for the autumn. I did the same with the blanket as well, and I used a Dylon pod dye, which is super simple to use, and it means you can keep on changing the colour of your fabrics without having to buy new. Let's move on to the console table and mirror, both of which were charity shop finds. The mirror was originally black and I did a paint effect on that. And the console table, which I picked up for £25, very modern solid oak, but not really my finish at all. So I did a special paint effect on there whereby I use wall filler with paint and then lots of sanding and then waxing, and there's a technique. I can link it in the description below, but I may well be doing it on a piece in the future, so look out for that if you're interested. The lamp is made from an old oil can, and I'd love to say that I'd just knocked that up one afternoon, but I didn't. I bought it from a vintage shop that was closing down several years ago, and then added a test tube light bulb. Now those I did get off Amazon, so I'll link those down below. The big earthenware pots here, they were an auction find. Can't remember how much I paid for them, but I'm guessing I probably didn't pay much more than about £30. Let's move down to the sitting room area now, and in particular this corner over here. Now I'm going to bring in a chair that I did a makeover on at the end of last summer. It was a charity shop find, and it's a crackle glaze effect that I used using glue. So I'm going to run you through that process. I found this at my local charity furniture shop for just £12.50. I know, bargain. It's actually in really good condition. All the joints were super solid. There wasn't anything loose or dropping off. The varnish was peeling, and to be honest, it hadn't been a very good job anyway. I think it was a modern piece. You know, it's very blonde wood. There's no real age to it. It's Eastern European, and as I say, a bad varnish job. I'm going to start with this one with a really good wash down, as I do with all of my pieces. Normally I'd then go into sanding, but I'm not with this one. I'm going to use glue, and this is old glue, and I'm also going to use Annie Sloan Paint French Linen. I'm not going to use one of my expensive chalk paint brushes. I'm just going to use an old flat brush because the paint is going to go on over glue. So the secret with this is to do it in sections. You're wanting the glue to start to form a skin, and then you go over with the paint, and then I like to encourage it on its cracking journey with the heat gun. There are different schools of thought on that, whether you should just let it crack and haze naturally or whether to introduce some heat. I personally like to do the latter, and as you can see, it produces some amazing cracking. So rather than spending money on expensive crackle glaze mediums, which you can buy, you can use ordinary glue. It doesn't have to be wood glue. I was only using that because it was old stock. So any type of glue will do, just cheap PVA glue will do the job. Some areas, such as the legs, are a bit lumpy for me, so I just use a 120 grit sandpaper just to take that down and knock the lumps out. I like to do a bit of distressing, so I go heavy on the edges, or I'll use a wet cloth to take some of the paint off, and then I'm going to cover the whole chair in clear wax and then add some dark wax to create a different effect. So the clear wax is really there to protect. It's also really good to use to take off some of the dark wax if you put too much on. So I like to brush the clear wax on and then use a cloth so I can control just how much dark wax goes on there. If in some areas I put too much on, I'll then switch over to another clean rag, and that will go into the clear, and I can use that to rub back over the dark and lift some off. You don't wait for the clear wax to dry though. You need to do it all before it starts to cure. I left this to dry overnight, and then it went into my bedroom. It has been there for a while because my daughter has laid claim to it, but the room she wants to put it in is not ready yet. So I've decided now it's going to come down and live in the cottage, and then she can take it whenever she's ready for it. Now, whilst I was in Cornwall, I actually made a full price purchase. I know, shock, can you believe it? I bought this blanket. I just love the tones, the texture in it. It's made from recycled wool. And when I looked at the label, it actually says 50% recycled wool, 50% eco lamb's wool. Got to be honest here, didn't really know what eco lamb's wool was, so I had to have a Google, and it's wool from farmers who ecologically practice sheep breeding and handling through to careful washing and drying process. So there you go, every day's a school day. Oh, and I paid £65 for it. Now, you've noticed lots and lots of mirrors, not just the small ones, but the bigger ones as well. They're all charity shop finds and just finished in Annie Sloan chalk paint. As is this unit here. It was originally covered in a black lacquer, but I loved it so much. A, because it was low and I could use it as a window seat, and B, because it had these great drawers in. And again, small space, small house, you need lots of storage. Actually, you need lots of storage regardless of the size of your house. The other thing I always think you can never have enough of, in my humble opinion, is mirrors. So this is a great spot to sit and read some magazines, particularly magazines that the house has appeared in, whilst looking out over the garden, watching the wildlife, watching the weather. Whilst we're adding some fabrics, let's add a few more. Now this coffee table I picked up at auction, gave it a very light sand and finished it in a white wax. I did have a rug underneath here, but my husband wanted it for his office, so that's gone off elsewhere. So for the time being, I'm going to use a couple of sheepskins just under there, making it nice and cozy. But it may all change again soon because I've just found a charity shop rug, a sisal rug, for just £10. More of that another time. This sofa is about to change soon as well because I feel that the back is too high. It should be much lower. I found this for just £75 just as I was finishing the cottage, and we needed to use it for a shoot because we're a shoot location house. So I very quickly bought it and I haven't yet found one that I want to replace it with. Now on the coffee table I have this Royal Doulton bowl. It was £15 in a charity shop. And I'm going to fill it with all the hydrangeas that I've been drying. I say all, I have so many of them. This is really a very small selection, but they look lovely in there. And I'm just going to add a few essential oils to give a lovely scent. It's a simple, inexpensive way of creating a winter appropriate statement that can be used on a coffee table or sideboard or even on your dining room table. Now over to this shelving unit. When we were doing the build here, we were getting to the finishing touches and I'd said to Ben, the carpenter, can you please make a shelving unit for this corner and I'll sketch something out. And I designed something exactly like this. Went to the auctions that afternoon and £20 MDF shelving unit, there it was. It was covered in cream paint and it fitted perfectly without any alterations. So all I had to do was spray it up white, pop a new handle on and some new hinges on the door, and then Ben fixed it to the wall for me and bish bash bosh, there you go. Cheap as chips and it does the business. On the shelves, I'm using objects with the same colour palette that I've used throughout my winter decorating, and just bringing in a little bit of green as well. As you see, evergreen at this time of year, so that's what I'm using. Now onto the fireplace. So these foot bed warmers are ones that I picked up in Cornwall last week that I've added to my ever-growing collection. And yes, a few more vintage books. Now, I did see somebody on YouTube, a designer, say, don't style with small books. And what does she do? She pulls out a large coffee table book, Tom Ford. Well, I'm sorry, as lovely as Tom Ford may be and as lovely as his book is, everybody the world is mother and cat have got the Tom Ford book apart from me. So I don't want my home to look like everybody else's, thank you, so I will be decorating with small books. I'm also decorating with a garland that I picked up last summer. It was bright pink, so I gave it a muted finish with paint so it would work in my fall decorating and now my winter decorating. Let's slide this big slab of oak back and go into the bedroom. Now the chair can come back in here. I have to use it to reach the shelves because I am so vertically challenged. I like to keep my pieces to a minimum in this room. So on the bureau here that I picked up from a charity shop, because I love the curves of it, and also it's got lots of storage, I did a paint effect on that, and I'm adding a lamp that I found at HomeSense. I've wrapped the flex there in coir, and a candlestick that I did the stone effect on. Now either side of the bed are the shelves that I was talking about at the beginning, where Ben, my lovely carpenter, managed to make them wrap around the wall, and I've just added some candles. So one's obviously for safety. Let's go through this door into the bathroom now, and we'll do a little bit of decorating in there. Now the sink is actually a Victorian brass jam pan, and I took it to a specialist steel fabricator to cut the hole in the bottom so I could put the drainage in. And the taps are ones that the plumber and I made. So we're coming to the end now of episode 5 of my winter decorating series. I hope you'll join me for episode 6 next week. We are probably going to be doing makeovers. I'm thinking flipping February. We're in flipping February, so let's do some flips that we can do on a winter time inside. So thank you so much for watching me. Have a great week, and I look forward to your company next time.